Alive is a non-fiction book by British author Piers Paul Read, published in 1974. It tells the true story of a Uruguayan rugby team whose plane crashed in the Andes Mountains in 1972, leading the survivors to resort to cannibalism in order to stay alive. The book was later adapted into a film in 1993. Plot summary. Rugby was introduced to Uruguay by Irish priests who were tasked with educating middle-class children. The sport became associated with the wealthy elite in cities like Montevideo, where the Old Christians Club emerged as one of the most renowned rugby teams. In 1972, club members organized a trip to Chile, selling tickets on a charter flight to family and friends. The passengers included affluent young men, socialist students, and middle-aged individuals. The flight departed with 40 passengers and 5 crew members, navigating a treacherous route over the Andes. Due to poor weather, the plane was forced to land in Argentina, where the passengers spent the night. The next day, the plane tragically crashed in the Andes, resulting in many immediate fatalities. The wreckage came to a stop on a snowy mountainside, where survivors emerged to assess their dire situation, feeling cold, isolated, and struggling to grasp what had happened. They huddled together in the plane for warmth. The following day, the survivors confronted their harsh reality. 2 medical students, Canessa and Zerbino, attempted to provide assistance, but many succumbed to their injuries. The survivors gathered whatever clothing and food they could find, rationing supplies while trying to protect themselves from the cold. Faced with dwindling food, discussions about eating the flesh of the deceased began, initiated by Nando Paredo, who had lost his mother and sister in the crash and was desperate to return to civilization. As families and friends initiated a search for the missing plane, the survivors realized that consuming human flesh was their only hope for survival. They began to harvest meat from the deceased, a task that quickly became a grim daily necessity alongside melting snow for water. One night, an avalanche struck, burying several survivors inside the wreckage, and a subsequent blizzard trapped them for days with the bodies of the dead. Eventually, the survivors decided to send a group on an expedition to seek help, choosing their fittest and most determined members, who were given extra rations to prepare for the challenging journey. While this decision caused friction among the group, it helped maintain a fragile social order as each person took on specific roles. The survivors anticipated mid-November, when summer would bring better weather. Paredo, Canessa, and Vizintin were chosen to embark on the journey. After spending a cold night camping, they realized they could not afford to be exposed for long and returned to the wreckage to regroup. Another expedition was planned while the families in Uruguay continued their search efforts. As food supplies diminished, the survivors scavenged for more bodies in the snow, consuming all parts they could find, including bone marrow and brains. Another expedition was set for December 12, with Canessa and Paredo scouting the terrain. They sent Vizintin back to share his rations with the remaining survivors, knowing they faced a long and arduous journey ahead. Back at the crash site, tensions grew as hope faded among the survivors, while their families persisted in their search, turning to various sources, including paranormal advisors and dubious witness reports, to seek help from the Chilean military. As Canessa and Paredo continued their trek down a long valley, they came upon a river surrounded by flowers, where they paused in prayer. Following the river, they eventually spotted signs of human life and tried to attract the attention of a horseman. The next day, they successfully made contact and were led to a house where they received food. Authorities and the press arrived soon after, and Canessa and Paredo guided them to the remaining survivors. Rescue helicopters were dispatched, and the men were saved, taken to hospitals in Chile where they received a celebrity-like treatment. The revelation of their cannibalism stirred controversy, but the survivors explained their decisions. They were ultimately reunited with their families, and a memorial for the deceased was established at the crash site.